Hello, I'm Ray with another ghostly tale for Christmas 2022. Now, a friend of mine married this lovely lady, Kathy, and they'd been married, 2 or 3 years, and they were having a few problems. I had a drink with him. We used to pop out about once a month just to have a chat and a couple of beers, old time's sake and all that. And he said to me a couple of times, he said, "Oh, Kathy and I, we're not getting on too well. We've got a few problems. I think she's got someone else." So I said, "What makes you think that? What's happened? Are there any clues? What's happened?" And he said, "Well, things disappear." He said, "I'll put something down. For example, I'll put a cup down there." He said, "I've got a favourite cup that I always use for tea and coffee." And he said, "It just disappears. It'll disappear for not a day, 2, 3 days. And I search everywhere, it's gone. Suddenly, it's back on the side in the kitchen." He said, "It's obviously her. There's no one else in the house. She's moving things around. Why would she do that?" And I said, "Well, why does that make you think that she's got someone else? Just because you can't find your cup, it doesn't mean to say she's got someone else." He went on to explain that this had been happening over a period of several months, and not only his bits and pieces, his car keys, for example, he always leaves them in the lounge on the little stool by his chair. They disappeared. He was late for work. He couldn't find his car keys. Eventually, they were in the lounge, but on the floor by the table. Okay, he could have knocked them off the table, but no, he said he'd searched everywhere. Kathy's hairbrush disappeared for 3 days. She blamed him. It's a special hairbrush that she had, as she used it every morning, and it disappeared. And "Where is it?" She's saying, "Where is it? Come on, you're messing around. Where is it?" 3 days later, it was back on her dressing table. Of course, she thought it was him, and he thought it was her, hiding his bits and pieces. And he said, "To be honest, this whole thing is coming between us. We're drifting apart because of it." So I said, "But why do you think that she's got someone else?" And he said, "Right, the back door, before we go out anywhere, we pop out for a drink down the local pub, we always make sure the place is locked up." He said, "I've got back from the pub with her and the back door's open. We haven't had burglars, it's bolted. It's completely locked and bolted from the inside. Obviously she has left the door open. She's opened it for some reason. This causes a rift between us. She's blaming me. I reckon that she's doing all this with this other person, whoever he is, just so we eventually split up." And he said, "Look, I'll tell you the truth." He said, "Kathy went out with my brother, Simon. She went out with him for about 18 months. He wanted to go and live in Spain. She didn't want to, so they split up. And I sort of took his place." So I said, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." And he said, "Well, Simon, he wasn't very happy about that. Kathy and I got married. He'd gone off to Spain, so he didn't come to our wedding. Not really had any contact with him since. But I think she still wants to be with Simon." So I said to him, "I think you're complicating all this. Why would she want to be with Simon? Leave the door open." I said, "Well, are you saying he's back here and moving things about in the house?" And he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I really can't see that happening." He said, "Do you think I'm going mad?" And I had to be honest. I said to him, "I think you're getting this out of all proportion. You're losing bits and pieces, stuff's moving around, you're blaming each other, you're thinking it's your brother Simon that's come back from Spain and he wants Kathy and Kathy wants him. I think you're getting all this mixed up in your head, to be honest." He said, "I do see your point. Perhaps I am going over the top with it all." He said, "But it is rather odd that all these things are moving around." And I said, "Well, look, let's separate that for a minute. Forget the things that are moving around. Let's deal with that afterwards." Then he explained to me that he had taken Kathy out for a meal only a few weeks back. He wanted to try and get them close together, and he booked a table. Taxi had turned up at the house and they'd gone off for this meal. He said it's a surprise. They got to this quite expensive restaurant, sat at the table, And he was really pleased. This is a nice surprise and they're going to enjoy the evening. And he said to me, I just don't believe it. The first thing she said was, "Oh, it's lovely here. I used to come here with Simon." And he said, for me, it just ruined the evening. That was it. Simon again. He said another time we went to London, have a day out in London, went up on the train. We were going to have lunch somewhere and look around the shops. She wanted to go to Madame Tussauds. They got there, they were looking around at all the wax figures. And she said, "Oh, when I came here with Simon, he did make me laugh because he said blah, 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 whatever." And he said again, "It's Simon." Simon had taken her to Madame Tussauds. Simon had taken her out to that posh restaurant for a meal. They'd been there several times. He said, "It's always my brother Simon. Simon this, Simon that." He said, "That's why I feel that she wants him back." He said several other things. "Oh, Simon and I used to do this," and "Oh, I went there with Simon. Oh, Simon took me there." He said, "To be honest, I've had enough of it, and we are drifting apart. Things are disappearing more and more." And he said, "I just don't really understand what's going on anymore." And he did say to me, "You're the first person I've told." He said, "I can't tell other people things disappear." He said, "We've known each other since school days, which we had. And I'd known them as a couple I went to their wedding. So it all seemed such a shame to me, all this business about Simon and things moving around. But as I said to him, let's forget about things disappearing and then reappearing a few days later. Let's just look at you two and talk about Simon and your fixation with Simon, and possibly her fixation with him as well." I popped round there one evening. I was just putting a Christmas card through their door. Christmas was only a couple of days off. And Kathy opened the door. She said, "I thought that was you. I saw you through the window." She said, "Come in." And I said, "No, I won't. I had a pile of cards to deliver." She said, "What are you doing Christmas Eve? Come round." And I was on my own. She knew that. And I said, "Well, are you sure?" I was going to just go and sit in the pub. No. She said, "Come round. We've talked about it. And we'd love to see you Christmas Eve." I said, "Okay, great." I went round there Christmas Eve. I took some cans of beer and a couple of bottles of wine. And Kathy had done a lovely spread. There's all the cake and biscuits and stuff. It was all right. I was thin then. I didn't need to diet then. It was lovely. We'd only been sitting in the lounge for 10 minutes having a chat when the phone rang. It was her mother. There was some problem or something at her mother's place. Now, she didn't live that far away. Luckily, they could walk there. They couldn't drive because they'd been drinking. So they decided, look, we're both going to walk round there. He didn't want her to walk round there on her own in the dark, of course. So I said, look, both go. It's fine. I'll stay here and I'll see you when you get back. All right, make yourself at home. Have plenty to drink. I said, I will. I'll eat all the food. Anyway, off they went. And I was just sitting there thinking about what a lovely couple they were. What a shame all this was. When I heard a noise in the dining room, the back room, like a thud, a couple of times. So I walked through the hall into the dining room, turned the light on. There's this chap standing there. The back door, the dining room door out into the patio was wide open, and there's this chap. And it was Simon. I knew him from old days. "Simon," I said, "I didn't think it was you doing all this. I've been arguing against it all the time, saying, no, it can't be you. What are you doing?" I was quite cross, got quite cross with him. He said, I know, I've been moving things about. And I saw he was holding in his hand a photo frame with a photo in it, their wedding photo. He put the photo frame back and he was walking towards the open door. And I said, I'm going to tell them, as soon as I get back, I'm going to tell them exactly what's going on, that you're back in England and you've been doing all this. He went out to the garden, didn't speak to me, didn't turn around, didn't speak to me, and that was it. He obviously didn't know what to do. I'm thinking, well, he's obviously embarrassed. When they got back, I decided not to go and start blabbing about Simon I didn't want to spoil the evening. I didn't think he'd come back again. I really didn't. I thought, I'm just going to leave it. I'd shut the dining room door. I'd shut that and locked it. And we had a lovely evening. It was great. They were getting on well together. And I thought that that's the end of that. There's going to be no more Simon sneaking into the house, moving stuff around. I was annoyed at him for doing that. And I did wonder whether Kathy knew about it, but I just thought, well, leave it. When the phone rang, this was, I don't know, an hour later, the phone rang. And Kathy answered it. And she said, oh, long distance from Spain. Kind of held the phone out. She obviously didn't want to know, so he took it and he said, yeah, hello. Then he was saying, sorry, I don't understand Spanish. Can you speak English? Yes, I'll hold. Someone else came on the phone. It was the Spanish police. He looked shocked. His brother was dead. Apparently he died a couple of months ago. I won't go into any of that because it's irrelevant, but he died a couple of months previously. And the police had been trying to find some relation in the UK to explain what had happened. And they'd eventually tracked him down. I haven't mentioned this chap's name. You probably realise that. I haven't even made up a name for him because I don't want anyone to know at all. Obviously Kathy's name, her name wasn't Kathy. So I haven't even made up a name. We'll call him John, shall we? All right, we'll call this friend of mine John, Kathy's husband. He was shocked. And Kathy started crying. She had a few tears and I thought I'd just leave it. I wandered off into the dining room. I thought I'll leave them to it for a minute. I took my beer with me and went and stood in the dining room thinking, oh goodness me, you know, what is going on? Is this part of the joke? Spanish police phoning and saying that Simon's dead when I'd only just seen him an hour previously in the dining room. What was going on? Then Simon just walked through the back door. The door opened, he walked in, closed the door behind him, and I said to him, what are you doing? We've just had the police on the phone. He said, I'm trying to tell them what happened. I've been trying to tell them all this time. I'm moving things around to tell them it's me, I'm here. And I said, are you telling me that... I laughed. I'd had a few drinks by this stage. I said, are you telling me that you're a ghost? I said, come on. You've got someone to phone pretending to be the Spanish police. And he walked right up to me. And I just knew. I just froze. I started shivering. I was cold. I just stood there. And he put his hand out to touch me. And his hand just went through me. He wasn't solid. And I just stood with my beer. Couldn't believe it. And he just said, he backed off and he said, I'm so sorry. He said, can you explain? And I said, I'm not telling them this. I'm not telling them about you here now. They'll think I'm mad. After I'd calmed down a little bit, tried to steady my hand, didn't want to waste my beer, I walked back into the lounge and Kathy and John, we're calling him, aren't we, were sitting together on the sofa. They were holding hands and they both looked very upset. And I didn't say anything. I thought, I'm not going to start saying I've seen Simon in that. No. Funnily enough, it was Kathy. She said to me, we've just been having a chat. We reckon it was Simon moving things around to try and tell us what had happened. And I said, funny you should say that. I was just thinking the same thing. I reckon it was him trying to make contact with you, and that's the only way he could do it. And, you know, I sat down in the armchair opposite them, and from that moment, the rest of the evening, obviously it was very different. You know, John was upset he'd lost his brother. It was a weird situation. Kathy said, I never wanted Simon back. She was looking at John. She said, I never wanted him back. I know you thought that all along. And he said, well, now you can't have him, can you? And she said, no, well, I didn't ever want him back. She said, the day Simon and I split up, that was that. He wanted to go and live in Spain. I got together with you. And she said, to be honest, when he did go to Spain, I was quite pleased he was out of the way, leaving us to be together. And John said, well, why did you always mention Simon? She said, yeah, I know, it was a mistake. He said, wherever we went, oh, Simon took me here, Simon this, Simon that. And I said, listen, you two. I said, look, Simon's now gone. You two are together. Just stay together now. Just be happy. Be happy. I said, I know it's a sad time, obviously, with him passing like this. But you've got the rest of your lives. And they did have the rest of their lives in front of them. They had children. They stayed together. They had, 3 children in the end. The last one turned up rather late, unexpectedly. That's another issue. But that's basically the end of the story. How about that? What a strange thing to happen. Simon moving things around, and I've known things to move around. Do you know what it's like? You know what it's like. You put your pen down, you're writing something, you put your pen down for a minute and have a drink of coffee, and you go to pick up your pen and it's gone. You're thinking, well, hang on, the pen was here just now and it's gone. Why? What happens? And then it reappears again. I don't know. Talking of coffee, that's empty. Happy Christmas. I shall try and tell you some more of my strange tales, ghostly tales. Try and make a bit of time in the coming year to tell you a few more stories. Hope you enjoyed this one. It's a little bit, what's the word, convoluted, is it? I was trying not to say too much to give identities away, and on the other hand, I was trying to hook things together to construct a story. I'm waffling now. Happy Christmas. Take care. Bye-bye for now.